kill you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Zaku Talk. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. This season, G versus Wing, and that means my co-host is the lawful good
Bob Skerry.
Yeah, there you go. A little Dudley Do right in there.
Yeah, you gotta go for it.
And of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer reminding me to remind you that our email is zakutalkcast@gmail.com, and you can feel free to hit us with any questions, comments, queries. We'll be happy to talk about them on air. This week, episode 46 of both G Gundam and Gundam Wing. But before we get into that, Bob, how's your week been going?
Week's been going okay. So there's this weird thing that I just found out. Apparently, it's a really good idea to bake bread during the pandemic.
Why is that?
This is more for the people at home. It was a long-standing fad. Everybody got into sourdough starters. Everybody got into baking bread. So much so that it was hard to come by active dry yeast and cheap flour.
Well, I just got off another set, not mine. I was consulting on a short 3-day set, but they were all overnight. Not my favorite, mostly because I can't sleep in. Can't be done. So I get home at 7, and then at 9:30, my body's like, hey, we got to go. And I go, no. And they go, yeah, you've been sleeping too long. And I know we just got here. And they go, nope, the day's starting. And then I'm just exhausted the whole time. So not my favorite. But of the sets I've been doing post-COVID, this is one of the better ones. That wasn't mine. So no complaints there. Fine crew. And then a lot of paperwork for these studios we're looking at and applying to. And some location scouts at sort of these fields, open wilderness areas that we're looking to shoot in. So just pretty much, we have a month until my next shoot. So it's all hands on deck, a lot of work getting that ready to go and building some of the assets we need for the physical production. All right, Bob, with that out of the way, let us do our plot summary. Tell me what happened in episode 46 of G Gundam.
Episode 46, Rain's Crisis, Return of the Devil Gundam, or, in Japanese, Rain no Kiki, Devil Gundam Futatabi. Domon buries the Master Gundam and Master Asia's body as a funeral, proclaiming it to be the last time he will shed tears for Master Asia. The Devil Gundam needs a core life unit that can produce life to function as at its full potential. Ulube plans to use Rain for the core life unit and shoots Dr. Mikamura and offers Rain to the Devil Gundam as the core life unit. Domon looks for Rain in the hospital and instead finds Allenby, who tells him that Rain feels that she must make up for her father's sins and therefore left for Neo Japan without him. After Dr. Mikamura desperately radios Domon for help, Domon attempts to go into space, but he is stopped by Juan and the Walter Gundam. However, Master Asia's Funsaiki appears and helps defeat both Juan and the Walter Gundam, and Domon arrives in space.
All right, I remember all that happening. Over here in Gundam Wing, we have Miliardo's decision, or in the Japanese, Mirirudo no Ketsuden.
Miliardo.
Didn't have a good time with that.
It's like if you're trying to butcher saying Miliardo in Italian.
Yeah.
Miliardo.
It's that U in there.
I know.
Well, in this episode, Hero sneaks aboard Libra to rescue Relina, and they both go to confront Zex, but they fail to convince him to end the war. Meanwhile, Treize is piloting the new Tallgeese 2 mobile suit and leads the World Nation forces into battle in space. He offers a duel to Zex one-on-one to decide the fate of the war, but Zex fires Libra's cannon in refusal. Treize is saved thanks to the timely arrival of Lady Un, who is piloting the Wing Gundam. Then Treize orders his forces to destroy Libra, which feels fair. It is a big Death Star thing. All right there, Bob. So in G Gundam, the first thing that stood out to me, I thought, as the horse was there on the cliff and Domon was talking to it, why did we have a horse at all? At the end of this episode, it seems the goal, I guess, they wanted to have this spiritual Master Asia force kind of with Domon to have that unity and atonement of the Master Asia character. So I get what it's going for. But there was like 15 minutes where I was just like, why? Why did the show need to have a horse and why did it need to pilot a Gundam? But we find out why.
With regards to Funsaiki, we establish early on when we first meet Funsaiki that Domon had known the horse well enough. So it's not like it's just, I'm masterless. Guess I'll go with Domon. This is obviously Funsaiki's voice, right? But we know that that is the last individual that Funsaiki would know and would be familiar with. So I change the horse to a dog for a second. And for those of you at home, if you're listening by your computer, go ahead and type up horse with dog mouths.
I'm not going to do that.
I wanted to make sure there was a hot pause right there. So we got that answer. Thank you. This passing of the torch is now complete between Master Asia and Domon Kashu. We have our King of Hearts, who is now a full-fledged King of Hearts instead of having to share that bond with Master Asia, him now having passed. We also have the passing on of the last thing that he could offer, a steed for a king to ride. We now have a unit that is going to be a buddy, as I would say in some of my Sentai stuff, a buddy robo is a common thing. But you have this animal companion who is going to help uplift the leader of the Shuffle Alliance, and effectively also be a weapon, as we see in the fight with Wong, where we just straight up rip off Walter Gundam / Wong's head. If you saw that flicker effect, did you catch that?
Yeah, very, very. I mean, he was already dead, and I was okay with it. And then it turns out, whoops, he's not dead, and the DG cells are rebuilding his glasses. It's very nice of them to do that. But mostly he's just here to have the obligatory Gundam battle. Like, that's really his function.
So yeah, it's not an uncommon thing to have the, like, what's that? I thought you were dead. But we just truncate it. We make it very easy.
Yes, well, that's, as quickly as I was surprised he was still alive, he immediately died. And I go, okay, that was a speed bump.
Well, even Domon says it in his conversation with him. You're not a fighter. You have no chance of winning. And then just says, get ready to die, effectively.
And the Burning Gundam needs an outside thruster to get him into space, which makes sense. Walter Gundam, for some reason, does not.
Yeah, well, because the Walter Gundam is actively feeding off of what life might be left inside Wanyun Fat.
Okay.
That is the fight I will make there.
Yeah, fine. And the Horse Gundam, for some reason, also doesn't need outside boosters.
Well, no, it is...
Magic flying horse.
What the Rose thing that encapsulates the Gundam is to Neo Japan, Funsaiki was to Master Gundam. They showed it.
If you can make the Horse Gundam have the boosters, just put it in your regular Gundam. I don't know.
Well, I mean, considering it is not a Gundam that is actively built for fighting so much as for transport, you can probably pull out whatever gizmo doodads are inside the casing that would go towards fighting towards booster systems.
Didn't Domon launch himself into space halfway through the show anyway by like jumping or something so he could bounce off the ring?
Yeah, but he had to like overclock himself to do it.
Fine to do that.
Also, I mean, why would you want to waste all your energy and gas in your weapon that you're going to need to save your beloved if what you're going to do once you get there is putter out and start having fumes come out the ass of your God Gundam?
Yeah, so on that note, we get a little riddle from Wofat that Lube finds, and he's just like, what is it?
Are you talking about the whole needing the core life unit to be someone who can...
a healthy human with the power of life? That's how it's phrased in English. And I go, well, that's vague. Could be anybody. And then apparently it means a woman because they can give birth, which is fine because then he wants rain. But then I think, are there no other women on this space station? Like you can't. There's only rain is gonna work.
Militaristic. Don't know if the people who are on this unit are going to be worthwhile. Rain is a literal doctor, so you're doubling down on your bet that she has the power of life as well as her innate feminine ability to give birth.
I will buy the Devil Gundam consents if you could give birth. I don't think the Devil Gundam cares what your occupation is.
It's not a matter of the occupation. It's about the skill with which that occupation is done. To self-heal, to self-multiply and to self-evolve. All three of those things I feel could be enhanced by having an entity that understands what the hell those things might mean.
Okay.
Do you see where I'm trying to come from with it?
I see where it is. I wish it didn't sound so dumb.
Sucks for you, man.
So everybody is like, hey, we lost. That kind of sucks. But they get over it really quick, despite the fact that their whole life's ambitions were kind of riding on it. They seem pretty chill about it.
Well, overall, they kind of go over it when we have the final fight as of last episode. We have this whole thing where they acknowledge that they don't get to achieve their thing, but they knew going in that there is the opportunity for them to fail, and they already knew that they were actively allied with people that could best them. It only made sense that the one person that had already bested them before going into the match would try to do that. That they would beat them had it not been for the Devil Gundam thing anyway. So I think they were prepared with this understanding. And as you've said before, this doesn't really apply to reality as we know it. So good chance out there that things are going to work out for them in the end.
Yeah. Yes, but they don't know that. So he should be like, oh shit, my friends are still going to be in prison. Well, they're going to be pissed. But he's like, you know what? They'll understand. And I'm like, well,
yeah, that is the translation I got too. But I will say, I write that off as I did my best to try and save them. I already feel like a failure for having them gotten in there in the first place. And it's Neo-Russia using 90s logic. He was probably going to get screwed over anyway.
Rain and her father are in the Allenby hospital room, and then, like, there's a knock on the door, and then, like, a bunch of armed guards come in. It was very polite of them to knock. Don't know why they needed to do that. And poor Carrot can't catch a break. He's like, Domo, we did it! And Domo's like, fuck you, I gotta go. And then Carrot's like, what's going on? And then he sees all of Liu Bei's ships coming down, and he goes, what is happening? He is so out of touch with everything. All he wants to do is just have Japan run the world.
Man, it's almost like it was a political statement or something.
Poor Carrot. Domon has this memory of Master Asia saying, like, this is all a game, there's no real suffering, which, very Trey's-like, but seemed like there was a lot of suffering happening during these Gundam fights, so I'm not sure why they put it in there.
It's being masked by this idea of the game. If you were to put a NASCAR-like thing in the way of people being able to rule over the planet, I'm trying to go as close to reality, air quotes, as I can, because we don't have star-shaped Neo-America up in space. We have some sort of a weird race, and you have a representative of all nations, if not all major nations at the least, racing around, possibly creating massive damage to buildings on the countryside as these racers just race wherever that their cars can. Devastation goes off to the sides because they get to have their weapons and shit, pew, 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 spy hunter bullshit. People are still going to pay the pay-per-view to watch it. People are still going to make bets. People are still going to cheer on, hoping to see crashes and death because we look at it as a gladiatorial sport. By way of that, people would... There would be factions, of course. People that would not like to see this happen because this is absurd. This is over the top. Why would you do this? People might also write it off in the centrist area as, well, at least it's not getting people put into drafts and murdering things. Other people would be like, hell yeah, this is the best damn sport I ever done seen. That's my take on it, is that you could make Death NASCAR and it would be G Gundam.
Domon, he gets given Rain's like weird psychic crown thing, this thing that was used in one episode and then forgotten. And then what made sense to me was he just throws it into the water, which makes sense. It wasn't useful for most of the show, so just get rid of it. But then what I imagine is not uncommon in Sentai. A fisherman somehow is able to fish it up, and it still works perfectly fine, having been submerged in water for a day. Is that going to be accurate? This thing just is fine?
I also don't think that it actually ends up being anything. we spent a couple of minutes on this. I feel like And I don't remember every fact. Remember, I thought there was going to be more ecology statements in here than there actually was.
I mean, it is. It's just very boldly stated, but then it never really mattered. But they wanted us to think it, so Master Asia just has to be like, here's the thesis.
What I would say is, it is a representation of the bond that was made between Domon and Rain that showed that they were connected. And that's Domon casting it off because he feels like he can't connect with her. He does not want to bring more frustration or sadness into her life because of her decisions. So he's trying to respect that and symbolically is cutting off the connection. When the fisherman brings it back, it's around that time that he finally understands with everybody's input. Yeah, I don't need to just have some sort of a work conference to be able to see Rain. I can just hang out with her. Hell, I could even go on a date with her. All right, let's go to space.
He can even hear her all the way from space.
At first, I didn't think that it was that the other Shuffle Alliance members had heard some radio thing, which is what we find out after the fact. I thought they also heard Rain because of their Shuffle Alliance crests, because they seemed to set that off.
Yeah.
Their representatives were trying to find out what this weird radio signal was. Turns out it's Dad Mikamura. Hey, Domon kid, you wanna come up here and maybe save my daughter? Sorry, I fucked up. Oh God, I gotta climb in the shaft.
Yeah, poor Papa Meeks. One last, going back a little bit, I had a thought as Domon was leading the flower to launch up into space, and I thought, oh good, I'm glad they had this level of realism to it because the thrusters wouldn't get there. But then I thought, with the way these mobile fighters work, how does one activate the thrusters?
The way my brain would interpret this, when standing on there or engaging by putting your knee down, you're then doing some sort of a switch thing. Hey, there's a sensor in the knee pad that connects with the other thing. Magnets, miracles, fly up.
Okay.
That's how I would buy it. Otherwise, you can also go with, hey, brain sync, and now I can just stay in my brain space. Okay, thrusters, go! And it goes off. It's about as believable.
Then you could just think about fighting and it would fight. Like, you wouldn't even need to be physical anymore.
And that's how we get Ready Player One.
All right, my last thing I want to touch on here is this Lube thing. I'm not sure where I fall on this yet. I kind of go back and forth. On the one hand, I got no beef with this like surprise final villains. Like that, those can be cool. But on the other hand, I feel like Lube was such a non-presence for a lot of it. I don't know, and the tournament's over, and that ostensibly was kind of the whole crux of the show. It's like, well, we got 4 more episodes, but the tournament's done. And it feels very disjointed, and it feels as we go on, the tournament feels less and less important. And that's something I'd want to change up as we went forward.
This is where I will say whoever was on writing, not directing, but writing, I would yell at them for one of the easy rules that most people do understand about writing. They didn't do the rule. They told instead of showed off what they were wanting us to know. They just told us that Ulube is having this evil plot, that Ulube is trying to overthrow the government, that Ulube is Mr. Batty McBadpants. And that's it. We don't have any character development for him. We don't have any sinister double take moments where it's, oh, he said something. Oh, God, I guess that was more foreboding than I thought back in episode 31, or whatever. They didn't give us those opportunities like they did with Trey's and Zex.
Yeah, I think there are moments, too, where like we hear he goes back up into space and we could see him doing some things and like we think he's there to help Japan. And then Rain's father gives the big reveal. And then like all of a sudden now then we go back and Ilube's doing like something sinister, and we go like, "Oh no!" And so like there are moments there to put in there. So that's just something I would add in our theoretical revision of this.
I will also note that maybe it was just a poor handle on what they thought was a good thing. A lot of people that do these hidden villains, they like to ham it up sometimes by giving us too much information on the front end, where we'll see somebody go through a door, and then we'll have an inner monologue, but never show it off to anybody. So we, as the viewer, would always understand that Ulube was the villain, but everybody else would seemingly be in the dark until he decided to show it off. But then that puts him too far into the foreground for what's happening in the current story that they're trying to tell. By pulling back on that and only ever having the same information that Domon and Rain would have, means that we wouldn't get to have those interactions that we would normally for a story viewership perspective. We instead just, I guess Ulube is evil.
Even the voice actor has to like completely change the way he voices Lube, where at the beginning he's just like decisive leader guy, and now he's just like, look at me, everything I say sounds so evil.
Yeah.
I think you could even have some more stuff, especially if you kept him around more for the tournament, where he and Carrot get into a lot of fights. And we think Carrot's the dick because the nature of his character. But then at the end we realize Carrot, wasn't so bad, and Lube has been secretly trying to pivot these things, and that's why he was fighting with Carrot. Like there is opportunity here.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of seeds planted. We just have to tend to them.
I agree with you 110%. I think they might have, excuse the expression, blew their load back on episode 6. Because that's exactly what they did. They had the calm, collected, decisive Ulube saying, nah, hang back, Carrot. Why are you being such an ass? I'm not going to stop you from using the controller, but, you do you. And if it wasn't him doing that, it might have been Mikamura, but either way.
Yeah, and like that's a way you could set up too, is like it looks like Lube is in Domon's corner and is trying to protect him from Carrot, but it turns out that because he needs Domon for something, and like that's why it's so important. And so like that, that has the nice twist to it. And then Carrot just becomes like guy looking out for Japan instead of Domon, but Lube wasn't even looking out for Domon anyway. So like, there are ways it can be done.
I'm sure that there are many ways that things can be done. Gundam Wing, what is your take on the 4 other G team members? Yep. Shake that head. I love it.
I hate the G team. I hate it.
Yeah. What was your take on them all having their seemingly docile talk in the break room? But then when Duo makes the point that, hey, Mr. Good Guy over there can fuck up too, everybody just stops dead.
I love this pause here, right? Duo seemingly perhaps a little jealous or something of everybody just thinking Hero can do everything. And then, with that pause, we kind of realize that they need to think that. They need to believe that so that they can be inspired to keep going on, so that they can feel that this war is winnable, that he's on their side. Right? It's like the Superman effect, I guess, where he's this paragon for everything, and then they feel like it's not that dissimilar from Trey's fighting on the front line. Like, it's meant to inspire them. And somewhere in the back of their mind, though, they know he is just human, and he has made mistakes. And, like, having that brought up to the forefront kind of scares them as this final battle looms.
Yeah. I mentioned this forever ago, early on in our run here. There was that motivational poster that I'd seen on the internet. Depiction of 2 separate iterations of a scene. You had one person standing atop a heavy block being pulled by a bunch of people while the block is on some logs, and it says boss. Below that, a similar individual to the one that was on top of the block is now in front of the other people that are pulling, and it says the word leader. It is very true that if you are willing to get your hands in there with the people that you are trying to take command over, they will be inspired to follow through because they see that someone knows what they're doing, understands the value of people, and therefore has the capacity to bring a task to conclusion, as opposed to just pointing at people and say, get it done. That's not going to do anything for anybody. That's what happened with the guy from the Romefeller. I just want the power. You guys just do it.
A Japanese question for you, Bob. In the English subtitle of the title, for my translation, they call him Milliard. Is there a reason why they thought the O would be superfluous?
It's probably that it is Milliard, but in Japanese, when you have something that would end on a hard letter, that isn't how the language tends to play out. It ends with a vowel more often than not. You will have the end sound that would be involved and might find its way towards the end, but more often than not, when you're translating from a Romantic or Germanic language, that O sound just to create that finalization.
It's the only time they don't add the O, so that was interesting to see. All right, what else is jumping out at you here?
I told you she wasn't dead. Trying to make me be like, oh, well, I guess she's never coming back. No. if she doesn't die in front of him, if she is not 6 feet under, because this is the kind of scene that or showed that they would have done that scene. She's getting soap opera comatose. The fact that she piloted the wing was interesting, because up to this point, my understanding was it was a select few that had the capacity to be able to pilot a Gundam, not just any pilot, but someone who is a capable pilot, who is the only type that could pilot a Gundam.
Yeah, that was the hint that the mechanics say. And let me just say, in my defense, you gain nothing from being genre savvy other than that you get to feel smart, right? It takes away almost from the joy of watching the show.
Sure.
So that's why I have to try to get you to buy it another way, so that when it happens, you're like, woo!
I appreciate the effect. I really do. I wish I could shut it off, but I can't.
I mean, we got pretty good. We got like 20 episodes. You didn't see her. Very easy to forget she was around.
No, it's fair. That is fair. And I'm sure that many people at home who might not be as versed in media did get that surprise. And I just sounded like somebody with a conspiracy theory, which is fun.
Well, no, there's just this annoying trend. The problem with Hollywood films is they have to talk down to you so that you do feel smart.
Yeah.
And I think that takes away, that breeds an arrogance in us, but it takes away our ability to be open-minded. I don't know. What's interesting, like the show takes the time to have to spend on a love story between the two antagonists of the show. That's very interesting.
I appreciate that. I recall that there were a lot of will they, won't they kinds of relationships in anime back in the mid to late 90s. And you have some of them that have maintained that status even to today. I'm talking about Jesse and James for all you out there. But besides that, there have been plenty of whether it's comedic or sincere, romantic inclinations between characters. And it's just as common to have it happen on the protag side as it is on the antag side.
Yeah, it's nice. It annoys me that the suit in the important places didn't get destroyed by this giant cannon blast. I'm not sure why she can't just grab him and fly off instead of just bumping him out of the way.
Reactions. This is how you would do it in a not zero-G environment. Also, we have to make sure that we see that the original wing is not going to be coming back.
It is nice that they didn't forget, a mecha show could very easily be like, well, I got the upgrade, this suit doesn't matter anymore. But it is still out there. It's been just hanging out there for 10 episodes. Somebody did find it and do something with it. They did get rid of it quickly, but it existed.
The suit comes in, sacrifices itself, maybe some kind of a heads up of things that might come, an idea of what might have been happening between Zex and Treize not moments ago when they were trying to have their thieves can't conversation in front of everybody.
Yeah, so it actually takes me back. This was a common way that wars were solved in the classical world. As all these Greek tribes were fighting amongst each other, and even some early Italian tribes, it was just like they would send their strongest fighter. This was like an agreement. We'll send our strongest one, and whoever wins, everybody else will obey, and this way a lot of people don't have to die. So Treize is offering this to Zex. Zex says, F you, Treize.
It's funny because Treize then follows up with, that was the correct decision.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's him saying that, yes, you need to let me do this and let me be shot down so that people understand that this is not the way a war should be. That's what I'm getting from here so far. And I thought, just as a tangent here, I thought that Dorothy was in the know that this was a possibility, that her cousin, her beloved cousin, was offering himself up as sacrifice. And she's like, no, don't do it. Miliardo-sama, no.
I think she had an idea of how this would go down, but I don't think it was this.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing her cool demeanor fade as she's unable to kind of grasp what is really going on between these two.
Yeah.
And I think Treize knows what the ultimate thing is. I think that's why he says the correct decision. It looks ostensibly like Zex sort of does, but this is sort of the first time I really noticed how much he really, really wants Treize to die in this moment and how upset he is that he did not. And it makes me think back to these other side stories, like that one where he meets Cans, where he's fighting on the side of the colonists very briefly, and then Treize has to come and duel him, and Treize wins, and that's what gets Zex back into Oz. And I'm thinking, has he still got some resentment over that? So I don't know, that was sort of interesting. But ultimately, there is a big scheme between the two, and I think Dorothy thought she was in on it, but Zek seems to have gone down a different path, and so now she's not sure what to do.
Most of the episode is pretty cut and dry. I will say I liked how smoothly Hero sneaking into the base went. We forget for a while now that he is the Wunderkind.
Yeah.
So to see him fake being part of a no survivors crash, instantly integrate with the commotion to be able to then get by them and just walk with no issue. That was beautiful. That is a superb way to do subterfuge tactics, or rather espionage tactics, excuse me. You create disarray, you capitalize on it, you get what you want.
Yeah, I buy in on all the stuff that gets him into the hangar and then out of it. I guess you don't really have time for it, but once he's inside, he does sneak around very easily.
Yeah.
But I guess most people do not know what Hero Yui looks like, so if he's dressed up like everybody else, kind of makes sense.
All people get ever is names and the passing of the information down the chain. That does not mean that there are strong photographs. And these 5 are really solid, capable individuals, so much so that they know not to get pictures taken of them. That's why, even if they do the silly thing of, hey, I'm going to hide my face with my cap while I'm walking around with my very clear ponytail, Duo gets by, as does everyone else.
Well, Duo, interestingly, the only one that we know does have a photo of them out there in the open. So Hero could sneak around.
Honestly, I would say that compared to G Gundam this week, this may have been a more cut and dry episode. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
I mean, Bob, let's be real. They're both very cut and dry episodes.
Comparatively, though, right? We're using different bars here, right? One is a limbo bar, one is a dumbbell.
G Gundam compared to itself versus Gundam Wing compared to itself.
Yeah, it's within themselves. It's not one to the other. Excuse me. I feel like this is the one that you were saying was going to be one of the lesser ones of the final climax here.
I mean, they're not great. Like the nadir of this sequence is the battle with the Mercurius and the V8. Where it's, or like the one before that, where it's just like, we're going to go out and fight wave after wave. And now you get some moments, right? Dorothy has the Zero system in her, and Catra has a Zero system. Duo gets the stuff from Hildy. So like, there are small things in there that don't make it filler. But I just like, can we speed this up or do other interesting things besides these obligatory battles? Yeah, right. It's just Hero going in there. They talk to dumb hologram Zex in a show that has never indicated the hologram technology exists, even though there would have been many good times to use it early before this. And then like they go leave. You get that nice moment in the cafeteria with the other Gundam pilots, and then you have this interesting dynamic with Treize and Zex. And we're not quite sure what's going on there, and Dorothy, so we have to piece a lot of that together. So it doesn't bother me too much, especially since the episode is mainly focused on Hero and Zex and Treize. But you get this cool moment where Zex is like, Hero, you work for the colonies. I don't know why you're not helping along here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you mean the join me and together we can rule the universe?
I mean, for the first thing he offers is like, you should lead the White Fang if you think I'm not fit, which sort of makes sense. And then after that, he says join. Which in the manga happens a little earlier. Relena, and then, Hero saying to Relena, you are much more capable than I am. Yeah. Like, that's an interesting admission from Hero, and then Zex and Hero both kind of acknowledge how important she is in the post-war era. Zex sort of gives a hint at what he thinks this whole battle's for, but we're not certain because there is an element of a personal grudge here between them. I don't know. Straightforward, yes, but the interesting character notes that we get, I don't know, I think are fun to chew on.
Sure. And as someone who is very clearly a Gundam Wing academic, I'm sure that you can find these bits and pieces. But as you mentioned earlier, you're wanting me to look at this from a 10-year-old Patrick perspective, right?
Yeah.
On first glance, without picking this apart, it's pretty cut and dry. Unless I have all of the information that you have, which seems to also include not just the next 3 episodes that I have not seen, the film, the side manga, and any other ancillary information. A lot of these things are not going to ping on my radar,
Well, this is my argument, my rant about Hollywood talking down to us. It doesn't train us well. And so unless somebody's saying something, we think we got nothing. And you could just be like, Treize and Zex are going to have a battle and the Gundams are in between it. And you think like, that's it. But the show is really good at hinting at things. And if you're an active watcher, then there is a lot here to kind of have fun with. And a lot the show doesn't need to explicitly state because you're smarter than that. And the show thinks that most of the time.
Sure. No, and I do agree with you. And I'm not saying that I'm doing this as a passive watch, this, that, the other. But compared to the prior episodes where I feel you and I have been pretty tit for tat on understanding at least Wing. I know that I've had to do some esoteric translation for G Gundam. Other than that, I think we're pretty even keeled, you and I. So when I see an episode like this, it's not that it has nothing, but compared to itself, with the information that I've had up to this point, it doesn't offer me anything that has me excited enough to be like, wow, mind blown. Because what I feel like I've gotten from Treize and Zex in the past handful of episodes up to this point is pretty on par. Nothing really jingling and jangling for me compared to what they've already been doing. What's been happening with the boys, pretty straightforward. We're here, we're finally doing the team thing, and it feels weird. Also, are we in the right? And then Relina's like, okay, but pacifism isn't war, gang. Why are we warring for peace? This isn't war or peace, it's war and peace. Guys, please.
If you phrase it that way, yes. No mind blown. Like, this is the problem when kind of the final battlefields and teams are set, because now there's less of that in there. So you're right. That is less likely to happen. But compared to some earlier episodes, I think there's more here, like I said, to chew on, including some of these quotes here. Right, Treize, as he's flying up into Toggies too, he says, a war with no civility only gives rise to massacres. He says that in the manga, but then he also follows it up with, the only way to end fighting is with fighting, and I think only myself and Zex understand that in space. And then a few pages later, Relina says, the only way to, you cannot end fighting with fighting, you just breed more fighting. So, you get some interesting philosophies fighting back and forth there. Treize, as he's trying to talk Zex down, refuses to back off, and he says he loves the Earth, and that's why he cannot have he wants to stand in the way of Libra firing towards the Earth. It's mostly ornamental, but the statement is an interesting one from the person that was our antagonist for the early parts of the show. And then Wu Fei has an interesting line, which you might need to read the manga to understand the gravity of it, which would be its weakness. They're like, he went to Libra to save the girl. And Wu Fei's like, I gave him too much credit. I thought he was the most sane of us here.
No, I just took that as his general misogyny that we've gotten from only the show's text.
No, but again, like,
I know with the manga we have the additional information.
It's not even about the manga, but like the whole thing is integrity, right? And It's just like, I thought Hiro was going to do whatever it took to do the right thing to get the job done, and he had no attachments. But he sees that he has this attachment to Relina, and so he's worrying that's going to cloud his judgment. That's the other text that the show has given us.
While I see what your point is, I also have to disagree with the character in that one develops their integrity by being informed by the things around them, and that includes people and attachment. And so while it is one philosophy to say you have to just go straight forward, headlong, your belief is the only belief worth believing, there is the opportunity for that stagnation of belief to breed its own level of contempt for others around you. It is something that has to be handled very diligently, like plutonium.
Yes, and there are, that's the interesting, I think other characters would be in your mind in the show, and that would be more in line with your philosophy. But I am more in line with his philosophy.
I mean, do you want to spar, or are we good to press
sparring.
forward? Okay.
Like, I don't know, I like that. That's why it's easy for me to kind of defend him, because I get this notion of like, if he is so attached to Relina, is he going to choose to save her over a whole colony? He might, and that might not be great. And that's sort of what Wu Fei's trying to avoid.
Okay, well, when put that way, I can understand that. based on my reading of Wu Fei from this initial view, my take from him and his talk of integrity and don't let people affect you is it is a not just in the heat of a battle, but in life philosophy for him. And because of that, I'm interpreting him as being beyond stubborn. I'm interpreting him as being almost like a zealot is my current framing of him in my head based on the information that I've gotten and my interpretation of that information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's definitely what he was at the beginning of the show, when he was coming down with sort of this hatred towards the Earth, towards Oz, towards Treize in their duel many, many, many months ago for us. But like what happens when his colony is destroyed is he doesn't have those attachments anymore. It is sort of the last severance of his past and his wife. And so like he then has to kind of struggle to let go of himself to be able to be the idea of justice his master had always been teaching him.
Unless you have any other points that you want to hit, I have one last thought on the cinematic structure of this, and then I think we can go the way we go. I don't know how much of it was just to help pad it out so it made its runtime, because I think we linger a tad too long, given the context of the scene, on this launch shot of the ships going towards Libra in space as it just keeps on pulling back, but it's the same visual. There's nothing striking about it visually. It is a very simplistic visual, and then it just cuts to the to be continued stamp on the same spot. And I think it's a solid 5 or 6 seconds of no real gravitas beyond, oh boy, guess what happens next week vibes.
I'm going to say my thought behind the choice.
Please.
It's not a defense of it because I don't like this reference I'm going to make. Mm. But I think the goal was similar to the opening shot of Star Wars, where this ship comes in and it just keeps going and going, and you're like, holy shit, this is the long arm of the law. It's this very oppressive thing. It's this overwhelming opponent. And so I think the goal is here in the show where they're talking about a war to end all war is to kind of pull back, and it keeps revealing more and more troops. And it seems like there's no end to it. And it just feels like this war could be totally cataclysmic because millions of people could be dead just on the battlefield. I think that's the goal of it.
Well, then with that context, it feels less bad. But on wrapping up on all the direct interpersonal stuff versus the broad scale war that is about to occur, it felt jarring to go from the minute to the expansive.
For me, I think it's fine because Treize is just sort of announcing that we're going to go to war with Zex, and then it cuts to the war. Where I think it fails is that clearly it was a product of the low budget of the show, right? Because it's really just a still image that we pan back on.
Yeah.
What if we would come back in and do it, I think you keep the idea. But if things are kind of moving around or things are moving kind of into the battle as the camera's also pulling out, it kind of has, oddly, another film I don't respect, but is a good comp here, is the Pearl Harbor Michael Bay effect, where the indication there is that there's way more that we're not even seeing. So it feels endless, and we become less realizing of how long the shot's lasting because things are at least moving and keeping our eyeballs engaged. So that's a way I would fix it.
Okay.
Well, then I think we can go the way we go.
Like sand through the hourglass, this is the way that we go.
You have to go first, because I don't remember what mine is.
Okay. Let me just dig into my massive rectum and find something the way that I want to go this week. Okay. I do want to pull it back to the idea of the Wing Gundam being piloted by Lady Une, right? There is this weird visual that comes to mind of her doing this. It's not just my surprised that she is a capable enough pilot to manage the suit. It's also like the closing of her circle, her arc. She was so insistent on understanding the best way to defeat these individuals. And then she had her minor mental split between nice and mean Une. She seems to have come to some center now of being both of these individuals, but beyond that, just being willing to express her love and admiration of Trey's, so much so that she was willing to give her life for him in a suit that at one point she would have been disgusted with and would have gladly just blown to bits. But instead, she utilizes it as it symbolizes for her, I think, the understanding of where the war has to go.
It's an interesting thing that the show's able to pull off where we hate her so much early on, and then in that moment we're like, yeah, Lady Une, you saved the day. We're glad you're back on the field.
We got a little bit of that before she got shot. Literally, the episode she gets shot, she starts to clean herself up. Yes. And you remember, I was like, yes, she's finally, oh God, she's already in the ground.
Yeah, she's dead. But then she's alive again. And now you're happy when in episode 10, you want her dead. Mm-hmm. I think that is an impressive feat. She does complete her arc. She says one must fight the battle to understand its beauty, as she explains to Trey's why she did what she did. Trey's very sad that she did what she did. But right, she having a split personality because of this, that old idea of genius being able to hold two contradictory ideas in her head. And she has this way that sort of Roma Feller was looking at war in her, that she came up in. She's a Lady Une after all. She also was believing in Trey's ideals. So, it was just hard to kind of mash the two. Obviously, Roma Feller had a hard time surviving that schism itself. And so, right, she understands that. So now she has kind of figured out what Trey's is actually saying, but she understands that he's important enough to the oncoming battle and to what war should be, where it's worth more to save him than herself, but they both get to live and love and have fun.
Yeah, so that's the way I went with at least Wing's stuff. What about you?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to remember it.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But let me just little quickly, right? That we have the sad moment at the beginning of G Gundam.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, Master Asia is dead. Domon is sad, but he's won the Gundam fight. And then the narrator says, but I still have lines to say, and completely changes the tone. And I'm like, did we just sort of ruin what moment we had set up by breaking the fourth wall here?
I wonder how that is for you, because it shouldn't have been cut differently. But the way I remember it, we go with our traditional lead-in after having telling the horse to cry because it's the last time we're going to cry for Master Asia. Yeah, I was expecting that was the card you were going to pull on me, but no. Stalker did all right on my end. He is more solemn on my side and acknowledges that it seems my job is not yet done. And then he does his whole rip-off thing and follows through with the fight.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you're telling me is he's a little more over the top.
His first line might be somber, but then once he breaks the fourth wall, he's like, hey, wacky narrator here. And as for the horse crying, I don't know. In the world of the show, I go, fine. Well, you're G Gundam, fine. But this, I don't know, the narrator talking to me, I seem to be a little more irked by.
That's fair. It is nothing new to me based on not just Tokusatsu stuff that I've talked about before, but in general, I'm used to fourth wall breaking narration. I'll live. Yeah, no, I feel like when you do have a animal character, even though Funsaiki is played a lot lower on the scale than something like Abu from Aladdin, at least it is more realistic on how it would show its sadness for the loss of its owner and friend. Compared to, I'll use Abu again here, having over the top globule tears or whatever, because it's two very different realities. And even though this is a very bombastic reality, do not misunderstand me. I understand that we had a whole ass worm try to talk and say, no, don't eat me.
Oh my God.
I get it. But at least it does have a sense of reality where it matters, as opposed to when it's just trying to do a gag.
All right, well, now let's go and take a seat at the Nerd Corner.
Let's take a walk to the Nerd Corner, where we will talk about a lot of nerd stuff.
Yeah. A follow-up to an earlier Nerd Corner, and very good news for us. It has been announced that there will, in fact, be a Venture Brothers movie.
Oh,
presumably to wrap up the series. There's also in that press release they said they're going to do an Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie again and a Metalocalypse movie, presumably to wrap up that series as well.
Yeah, the third thing, I definitely agree. That's Brendan Small has said for years on end now that he was going to come back to it. He just never gave it time for it because keeps getting involved in other projects. But it is weird that Aqua Teen is going to get a movie, because I know they had like a brief step to the right when they tried to recontinue the series by having the new opening and slightly different title for a bit.
Yeah, every year they would change the title. But that just feels like Adult Swim being like, fuck it, let's do whatever we want.
That's fair. Yeah, no, I'm here for having a Venture Brothers movie. I know that Aqua Teen got a feature release, a theatrical release. Yeah. Do you think that these three are going to have that opportunity, or do you think these are going to be a on-demand style?
Yeah, this feels like a thing where they might show on Adult Swim proper, but I think they're going to go like straight to HBO Max, whatever that new one's called.
Yeah.
The Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, I did get to see in theaters. The Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, I did get to see in theaters. It was like 3 days before I turned 17, so they had to sneak me in because it was rated R. And we were like the only ones in there. And we had to go see it before my birthday was going to happen, because that was going to be the following week, and I just knew it was only going to last in Bellingham for 1 week. Indeed, it was true. I don't think it made a lot of money, so I don't think they would try to do that again. It's too niche of a product.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is that they had a boom on product sales. I remember when I was in high school, I had a sweet lady give for me for my birthday, just on a whim, a Master Chic stuffy from Hot Topic.
Hot Topic, yeah.
Hot Topic had it. Thing was like $20-$30. I don't know why she spent that level of money on a stuffed animal, but I appreciated it, and I had it for a long time.
Yeah.
But, they had enough of a climb that they gambled, and that's what you have to do with some of those types of series is it going to be strong enough to pull forward? Let's try to make the big leap. As opposed to things like Rick and Morty, where there's almost an oversaturation, a glut, if you will, of product around it, because so many people were waiting for it. But now that we've finally had the oversaturation of, hey, here's a bunch of games from Cryptozoic. Hey, here's everything Pickle Rick, including a Pickle Rick snack that you can purchase at FYE. You kind of start seeing the shark having already been dipping under you, so you can't try to jump over it, and you still find a way.
So good news there for all your Venture Brother fans out there. No word on when it will be out yet. Probably take at least a couple years. All right, Bob, what is your nerd corner this week?
I'll say that my nerd corner this week is my ass got a PS5 last week.
I was looking at those the other week. Are they like $800?
For a bundle.
Okay.
So last week, Wednesday, I had to sit while I was waiting for my oil to get changed. And my wife and I had been prepping for like a week or two to try and, as soon as something was slated to drop, just get on there and keep spamming. Because in this modern day and age, bots are a thing, and people will just set up a bot to be like, oh, it's in stock, click. Like lightning speed, click.
We should get a bot then.
No.
Okay.
Because that is cheating. That is not cool. I'm going to fight for it tooth and nail like every other damn person. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
But no, I got one, right?
I guess.
I stayed on. I was able to refresh and get the $800 set that came with 3 games, 2 controllers, and the system. And even cooler, the general manager of one of the GameStops near me took a hit by allowing me to swap 2 of the 3 games, MLB The Show 21 and Hitman 3, games I would never touch. Let me trade those in for games that I would actually play. So not only did we keep Returnal, which is like one of the open games, launch titles. A launch title that is basically a roguelite third-person shooter. So not bad if you're a roguelite fan. We got Village, Resident Evil 8, and I picked up Ghost of Tsushima. I know it's a PS4 game, but my PS4 would die if it had to handle it. And it's just been lovely.
That was one of your earlier nerd corners.
Yes, it was. And that's why I had to make sure I mentioned all this, because Ghost of Tsushima, as it turns out, plays very similarly to a lot of other games in the same style. I'm thinking Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn. If you know any of those titles and have played those, Ghost of Tsushima plays very similarly in its structuring. But if you're a fan of Japanese history, albeit altered for the sake of fun, I would highly recommend picking up the game if you haven't yet.
Let me thank Lev Van Rensselaer for helping us out this week. He's the audio maven that we are craven. I'd like to thank my co-host this week, as he will be each and every week this season, Bob Skerry. Bob, you got any plugs?
Hey, hi, Worldwide Sentai. This is Bob Skerry VOA coming at you live from the Zaku Talk HQ. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and a slew of other places by my handle, Bob Skerry VOA. You can also find me at bobskerryvoa.com to listen to my demos, because I'm, in fact, a voiceover artist.
And I am your host, Patrick Scale. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at QuixoticUnited.com. And all of our podcasts now on YouTube at our sister station, Quixotic Harmonics, where the new season of What the Hell Happened to Them has recently premiered, and you can watch us follow the exploits of Julia Roberts. All right, thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience why you are no longer a Wonderbug.
I'm no longer a Wanderbug because I have evolved into a Metacritic pod.